6 days after her own wedding, the new Queen of Navarre woke up in her bed. The spot next to her was empty. Her husband was already gone. Then, suddenly, there was a loud banging at her door. Someone was shouting, "Navarre! Navarre!" Then, the door burst open and a man with bloody shirt staggered into her room and fell right onto her bed. What's happening? 6 days earlier, August 18th, 1572, the lavish wedding ceremony for Marguerite de Valois, Princess of France, and younger sister of King Charles IX, and Henri de Bourbon, King of Navarre, took place in the Cathedral of Notre Dame. The bride and groom were both 19 years of age, and they were no strangers to each other. Having grown up together until they were 13, they had fond memories of each other. But this was no fairy tale wedding of the childhood sweethearts. During the 6 years since then, their paths drifted apart. The bride, Marguerite, called by many as Margot, had fallen in love with Henri de Lorraine, Duke of Guise. Her brothers and her controlling mother, Catherine de Medicis, did not approve of that particular match and hastily arranged a more convenient match with young Henri of Navarre. Henri, on his part, grew up to be quite the ladies' man. He loved ladies, and ladies loved him back, and he was quite happy with his new bride. By all accounts, Margot was highly attractive in a very sensual way. Juan de Austria, the illegitimate half-brother of King Felipe II of Spain, even visited France just to see her, and apparently said that the beauty of that princess is more divine than human. She is made to damn and ruin men rather than to save them. And not only that, it was a marriage that can help position himself for the throne of France. It was perfect. Or it should have been. Except his mother died only a couple months earlier in Catherine de Medicis, his mother-in-law's palace. But Henri figured the Queen Mother wouldn't have arranged her own daughter's wedding just to harm him. But he decided to show up with enough force just to make sure they wouldn't try anything funny. But his show of force and the Huguenot supporters keep coming into Paris were making Catholic Parisians nervous. Then, on 22nd, his chief advisor, Admiral Coligny, was attacked on the street. Someone connected to Duke of Guise, the leader of the Catholic League, tried to shoot him but missed. Henri and his men were furious. They wanted to demand justice. Henri even demanded King Charles IX to punish the Duke of Guise. He thought his men could take on the Guise forces if Charles decided to simply stand by. What he did not know was that Catherine de Medicis, the king's mother, and Henri, Duke of Anjou, the king's younger brother, had a different idea. After the attack on Coligny, Henri de Guise managed to persuade them that the crown should not allow the Huguenots gain upper hands by force, not in Paris, not in the presence of the Catholic king. But Henri's Huguenot forces were not insignificant. The only way to ensure the Catholic side will win was to launch a surprise attack. In the evening of August 23, 1572, Margot was summoned to her mother Catherine's chamber. She just thought it was for some family time with her mother and sister Claude, Duchess of Lorraine, who was in the castle for the wedding celebrations. But then, when Catherine dismissed her to go to bed, Claude suddenly burst into tears and told her, "For the love of God," cried she, "don't leave this chamber." Alarmed by this sudden burst, Margot stopped. Catherine was apparently very angry with this outburst, and the gentle Claude, who never had the courage to talk back to their mother, was sobbing and protesting, saying, "But sending Margot out will get her killed." Catherine sternly told her, "They will suspect something if she doesn't return." Margot was utterly confused at this because she had no idea what they were talking about. she was not told of anything beforehand about the Catholic faction's plans. They didn't entirely trust her because she was now the wife of the Protestant leader Henri de Navarre. The Protestants, on the other hand, didn't entirely trust her either because she was Catholic. But anyways, when the confused Margot returned to her wedding chamber, the Huguenot leadership was gathered there, all seething about the murder attempt at Admiral Coligny the day before. She felt uneasy, but could say nothing. The next morning, Henri woke early and went out to meet with his men. Margot had not slept well all night because she was worried and confused about the whole exchange between her sister and her mother, and the troubling mood of her husband's men. So she stayed in bed for another hour or so after Henri left. But then, all of a sudden, noise broke out from outside. Doors banging with a cry, "Navarre! Navarre!" Margot's chambermaid thought it was Henri and opened the door, but the person who burst in was one of Henri's men she saw the night before. His shirt was bloody, and he was clutching his shoulder, which was still bleeding, and he staggered a few steps, then fell right onto her bed. Then 4 archers chased after him into her chamber. At that point, Margot jumped out of her bed in shock and found herself right in between the archers and the bleeding man. And when she screamed, the captain of the guard of the palace ran into her chamber. The archers, who apparently were taking orders from the captain, left her room, leaving the bleeding man behind. Then the captain told Margot what was happening. The royal soldiers were wiping out the Huguenots. And according to Margot's memoir, the captain also helped her to get to a safer spot in the palace, which was her sister Claude's chamber. By this point, the palace of Louvre itself had become a hunting ground. She saw her husband's men being killed right in front of her eyes. Some of Henri's men followed her and begged her to help save them. In the meantime, her husband, Henri of Navarre, who went out early in the morning, found himself suddenly under attack. His personal guards, Protestant nobles who had accompanied him, were dragged from their quarters and butchered. Weapons flew toward Henri himself. He ran for his life with his cousin, the young Prince of Condé, who was also named Henri de Bourbon. And in the middle of all this chaos, he came face to face with an attacker who was ready to swing a sword at him. But just as a blade came for him, a door flew open. Someone grabbed the 2 Henris and pulled them into safety. The room they entered, suddenly they found themselves in the King Charles IX's own chambers. Charles IX, by then reportedly half mad, half crying, tried to explain himself in between sobs and rambles. The massacre hadn't been his idea, he said. The Queen Mother and Anjou made him do it, meaning his mother Catherine de Medicis and his younger brother Henri, the Duke of Anjou, the future Henri III. And now he was saving Henri, not out of principle, but because Margot begged him to. So somehow Margot, his reluctant bride, had become Henri's unlikely shield and lifeline. Now, Charles' frantic explanation that Catherine and the Duke of Anjou pushed him into it also revealed something else. The king was a puppet, physically frail, emotionally unstable, and spiritually dominated by his mother. Now, if it sounds like Catherine was a true architect of the massacre, you're not alone. History had largely placed the blame at Catherine de Medicis' feet. Catherine had, after all, orchestrated the royal wedding in the first place in an effort to bring peace between Catholics and Protestants. But would she really have arranged her daughter's marriage just to lure Huguenots into a slaughter? Possibly, but maybe not. There is no evidence that the massacre was planned from the beginning. At the time of Jean d'Arbre's death, and even through the wedding preparations, Catherine seemed committed to the tente. Killing off the Huguenot leadership would only reignite the civil war, and Catherine knew full well that the war was bad for the monarchy and worse for the mother of kings. But things spun out of control thanks to the Guise family. The Guise faction had no interest in peace with Huguenots, and they struck first and tried to assassinate Admiral Coligny. The initial attempt was unsuccessful, but this ignited anger from the Huguenot side. Catherine tried to contain the fallout, but it was too late. And when it came time to choose side, Catherine decided to side with the Guise, and the attack on the Huguenots began. And once it started, even she couldn't stop it. The city boiled over. It wasn't a single plan carried out with clockwork precision. It was a wildfire, sparked by vengeance, fanned by rumor, and allowed to rage on by rulers who were too weak or too calculating to stop it. Across Europe, the reaction was immediate: horror, outrage, terror. Of course, religious violence was nothing new. Just a few years earlier, the Duke of Alba had overseen a brutal crackdown of the Protestants in the Spanish Netherlands. But even Alba had used the formality of legal process, accusations of heresy or rebellion, trials, and sentences. France didn't even bother with any such pretense. There were no charges, no trials, only brute force attack and blood. And the sheer scale of violence alone stunned Europe. And worse, most of the victims hadn't done anything at all. No riots, no rebellion, no seditious plots. They had come to Paris for a wedding. This was a mass killing born not out of strategy, but out of hatred. Years of civil war had fermented bitterness on both sides. Assassinations and betrayals had created a climate where vengeance came easily, and once the violence began, it took on a life of its own. It wasn't a grand struggle and abstract religious conflict. It deeply affected the ordinary people, Catholics and Huguenots alike. John Everett Millais, a British artist of the 19th century, painted a work that focuses not on the massacre itself, but on its human cost. In the painting, we see two lovers, nobles by the look of their clothes. They are deeply in love, defying the opposition around them. The woman is Catholic, the man likely a Huguenot. He must attend the wedding of Henri and Marguerite at the Louvre in Paris, but the rumors are already spreading. Danger is in the air. She begs him to wear a white armband, the symbol of Catholic allegiance, to mark him as safe. He refuses. In the painting, he embraces her gently, but his right hand is firm. He is removing the white cloth from his arm. He is reassuring her. He will be fine. He will return soon. But we, the viewer, know better. We know he wouldn't return. By refusing that white cloth, he had sealed his fate. What happened next is unwritten, but we can imagine her waiting beside the ivy-covered wall where they had said goodbye. And even after she gave up any hope and perhaps married to someone else, have children, she might have remembered that goodbye and the white cloth when she saw that ivy-covered wall. And that's what the massacre truly was. Not just politics, not just religion, but a catastrophe that swallowed up lives, ordinary and innocent lives,